All right there, Kyle. We are, we're doing a little something a little different today. And if you looked at this episode before you hit play, you're like, wait a minute, guys, like that's short. That's a short episode. We are playing with a little bit of a shorter time frame now. And here's the format for this episode. We've got a question that came in through the Make Math Moments Academy. But we get questions all the time through email. Feel free to actually email us any questions that you have about what you're doing in your classrooms. But here's one, Kyle, that I think we get a lot, and also it occurs a lot on our district calls with our leaders. But here, I'm going to toss this at you. This teacher reached out to us and basically was talking a little bit of preamble about teaching through problem-based lessons. Teaching
Mhm.
through could be a 3-act task. It could be, a problem where we give and we encourage with productive struggle, noticing and wondering. Basically, you're teaching through this problem-based approach to start. And this teacher says, like, how do we do this method when we also have, so there's a couple questions here we'll riff on, but and I know here's the other format is you don't know this question. Like this is coming
No.
at you live. Okay. So
Yeah, yeah, I love
how
it.
do how do we do this method when we also have a mandated curriculum that we are supposed to use? Okay.
Mhm.
So we've got to use that curriculum. Now, the second question part of this is, and we're going to try to talk about this quickly, is how do we know if we have sufficient background and content knowledge to be successful following, that format of a lesson? All
Now,
right.
can I
Those,
clarify here?
yeah, go ahead.
When you say about the content knowledge part, are we talking about the teacher themselves or the
Yeah,
students?
no, the teacher asked that,
Mm.
how do we know if we have
Oh,
sufficient background knowledge?
got
So
it.
the teacher asked this. So I like that the teacher is even thinking about that, because a lot of teachers don't, I think about that. They're
Yep.
like, let me just go in and I'm gonna like give this a shot. I'm gonna use some of these
Mhm.
teacher moves, the pedagogical moves, and I'm following. But this teacher is actually reflecting, going like, okay, first off, I got to follow my curriculum that the district has set for me.
Yep.
Second is, how do I have enough? Like, am I prepared to
Right.
like engage in this, or is there, what else do I have to do to actually really be successful here? All right, what are your
Right.
thoughts so far?
Well, right away, I would say is like, have we done the appropriate reflecting ahead of time to really understand what my mandated resource is trying to do? And I'm imagining, and John, I'm sure you've had this experience, but I remember being a newer teacher and I was following a certain resource, and you sort of usually you rely on other colleagues, right? To go like, hey, what would you do for this topic? Or what would you do for that topic? But when you're in a scenario where it's like, listen, we're all doing the same thing, like we're all going to be following the same resource, what you all have to do, you and your colleagues need to do, is you sort of need to zoom out and together, I would encourage together, if possible, start thinking about why did they do what they're doing in this particular lesson? And what I mean by that is
Mm,
usually you don't publish a resource without there being a lot of time and effort put into what they're trying to get you to do as the educator. So, a lot of times when a resource falls flat, I don't think it's the actual resource itself or the idea or maybe it could even be an investigation. It's that me as the facilitator, I actually didn't understand what it was trying to accomplish. So you know what we end up doing? We start ad-libbing. Like we start
mm-hmm,
like taking what we think might be going on and then we try to do something with it. So I feel
mm-hmm.
like before we worry about problem-based lessons, the reality is that most curriculum that has been created over the past couple of decades had tried or at least attempted to do some sort of inquiry at the start,
Yep.
investigation at the start, something to get students doing. And you know what I did for a really long time? I skipped all that.
Me too. Me
I
too.
just jumped to the big red box, and I sort of rushed to that algorithm. So the real question is, how hard am I working to try to do a problem based lesson when in reality, there could be a really good starting point happening in that resource anyway? So the real question is, what was the goal when that author was writing that particular lesson? What was their goal? And if you're not clear on that, you need to zoom out and really try to understand, like, what is the purpose here? Because if it's not making sense to you, then that likely just means that there's something missing. Either I'm misinterpreting something or I'm not seeing it, or, and this is the part where I think the content knowledge comes in, maybe there's something going on here that I'm unaware of, right? Because
Yeah.
like if this activity is asking me to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm not sure why, or it doesn't seem to make sense to me why we would do that with students, is it possible that maybe there's something happening here in the background that I'm actually not aware of, and that, oh, I need to actually do some of this math, maybe actually do the activity as if I was a student to make sense of the activity. And maybe you might learn something about that content knowledge, and in return, be able to take that mandated lesson and turn it into something that could actually be really impactful and might meet that next goal of problem-based learning.
So what I just heard you say is that trying to answer both of those wonders is that to say like, are we trying to grab something outside of this resource and try to fit it in when the actual resource might have exactly what we are looking for to achieve in our classrooms? And we just need to kind of maybe think about preparing or thinking about understanding the intentionality behind what that curriculum resource is trying to share with us. Because you're right, like I'll be honest, like when I saw that, and I think this goes to the content knowledge piece too, like we do have to think about how much we like how much bias we're bringing to the to the analysis of the lesson that's in front of us. And even when I say that, teachers are like, man, like they're talking about a lot of thinking that's going into before the lesson even comes, like before I even turn the page over to what the next lesson is in the
Mm-hmm.
pacing guide, because I just finished that. Now I got to go teach literacy, or now I have to teach gym, and so it's kind of like there's a lot of thinking that does have to go in. So that addresses that part. It's like if we just think that we're going to show up and turn the page, we want to all of a sudden have different results, we do have to go, how much planning time am I addressing this? Because I I used to my bias was that I thought I knew better. And I thought, hey, I'm going to skip that inquiry because I'm going to jump right to the heart of what matters. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought what mattered, like what you said, is the algorithm, is the getting to the meat of this, like, hey, what is the real purpose here? And that was actually part of me going, what is the real purpose? So at the beginning of this lesson, I started to assume what the purpose of learning this idea was. But my purpose back then was that to get to the algebra, to get to the actual like algorithm and show the steps and get the steps into the students. And the students repeat those steps back to me so I can go, yep, we're good. We're moving on. You got the steps. Like that was a thinking that I had, which means I was thinking about what is the purpose here. And I omitted the investigation because I like that wastes time if my real purpose is to just front load and give the kids the algorithms that they need. And instead of
Yeah.
going, what is the actual purpose of understanding and learning this mathematics today? And if I still believe that it's the algorithm, then I'm jumping to it. But if I don't, if I actually believe that the purpose of my lesson today is to get students to grapple with the behaviors of this
Mm-hmm.
mathematics, then
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make the choice to go, let me take the second look at the inquiry part.
Right. So I think one of the big pieces here, and as you were kind of recapping that and sort of sharing that experience, I'm hoping like a big takeaway, and this might be something that you want to incorporate into your daily practice and your daily prepping or planning, is when you look at that resource, if you're in that spot, even if you don't have a mandated resource or curriculum that you have to use, I would at least start there and spend the necessary time to try to better understand what was the publisher trying to achieve, what were they trying to do, so that you can make a clear choice as to whether you're trying to get to the same end result or not. And by doing that, you can decide whether I do need to go to something else to try to make this a little bit better, or that I need to tweak something along the way, or I need to add a little more curiosity, right? I need to withhold a little bit more information. Or, if we apply some of the things that we share on the show and through the 3-part framework, you can actually take what you have, but it needs to start with understanding. So if I am not clear on what the publisher is trying to achieve, that means I need to spend more time trying to understand that first. Otherwise, you're starting with a completely blank slate. And in some cases, you're not allowed to, right? You're
Right.
supposed to be following this curriculum. So if that's the case for you, then you need to spend more time understanding what was the intent here. And am I clear on the intention? Am I happy about how they're approaching it? And then if not, what are the small tweaks that I can make along the way? Like what is actually missing here? And there are oftentimes like you'll spend more time trying to understand what they're doing, but that means you'll spend less time, in my opinion, on the tweaking or trying to start from scratch or starting, and really trying to figure out how do I force feed this thing to the students? You want to make sure that you're taking it and you're trying to maximize the actual experience for those students by doing those small little tweaks. But you can't do effective tweaks if you don't have a good understanding of what the goal was and that you're not clear. Like you almost want to be able to say, like, if this author was here, I could ask that author questions and we could talk about why they did this and why they did that. We don't have that opportunity. But if I spend enough time looking at this, I can make some pretty clear assumptions as to what their goal was here and why they did what they did. If you are completely not sure, then you've got to talk to your colleagues. You got to talk about, like, why do you think they're doing this step here? Like,
Right.
this part is confusing to me, but let's be honest. The publisher didn't just randomly write this. They had people review it. They had people spending a lot of time on it. They feedbacked it, all of these things. And a lot of people thought that it was a good thing to put that step. So let's make sure that we utilize our network inside of our grade band or in our department or wherever it
PLC
is to go
groups.
TLC and go, why is that happen? Like, is there something going on under the hood that I'm unaware of? Or is this just sort of like a silly, like, and it does happen, right? Sometimes things slip by and you go, like, maybe it's not that important, but let's not try to just make that decision ourselves. Let's utilize our network to try to figure out whether that's a good move or not. And maybe I might learn something about the content knowledge in the process by doing that work.
You got it. And I think what you just, said is you're thinking about the intentionality and in looking at the choices the publisher made, but it's actually leading you by asking yourselves those questions. You're automatically leading yourself to going, I probably need to know a little bit more about the math, like the content knowledge that this teacher is, asking about. And because if you're wondering why, that means like I gotta dig. I gotta
Mhm.
ask, or I gotta talk about the PLCs. Like if you think about some of the districts that we are talking with on a regular basis, supporting throughout the year, some of the most impactful work that they are doing is in their PLC groups, breaking down lessons like that, taking the existing resources, not trying to fit something new, but taking existing resources and going, what's going on here? How do we build our content knowledge so we're prepared to do the work that's listed here? And and we'll be honest that for most of us, and for me still, Kyle, is that if I do that process, I always have to figure out that I have to learn something new. I always have to go like, you know what? I didn't, that model, I could do it that way, or I didn't understand that. Like these are the important things to be able to effectively deliver the problem-based lesson and then consolidate it at the end so that you're bringing home, the important learning goals, but tying things together because you understood in at the deeper level the mathematics that's happening in the room. So thinking about your resource, what I'm hearing is like we do need to spend some time thinking about the intentionality. It might lead it to you to wonder if you do need to go outside, but then also it might lead you to go, I need to dig a little bit more. So if you kind of reverse engineer where we ended up here today, it's like, let's look at what's given. Let's make sure we unpack the intentionality behind the sections, the portions, or the timing that this lesson is supposed to kind of give us, and figure out if we need to go further in our own learning or if we need to backtrack and figure out something to supplement.
I love it. I love it. So, friends, we're talking a lot here about the leaves of the tree, but also talking about taking that resource and really trying to think about, hey, the actual branches of the tree, that pedagogy, right? And going all the way down to the roots of the tree to talk
Mm-hmm.
about the content knowledge. So, really important, really, especially if you're in a situation where you have a resource that's given to you, keep in mind that when you have a mandated resource, that might be more for pacing, and that there's ways that you can take what's there and that you can insert different little tweaks along the way. Hey, if you don't have a mandated resource and you are looking for content driven, curious type problem based lessons, you should head on over to makemathmoments.com/tasks, and you can check out our very extensive catalog of full problem based units. Every day one of all the units are wide open for you to use, download, all of those things. And of course, if you want to dig deeper and go through entire units, then you can become a member of the Academy. So, friends, I hope you have an awesome, awesome rest of the teaching day. And we look forward to some more questions through the Academy or social media.
Yeah, and if you're like, hey guys, I liked the new style. I liked that it was a little bit shorter for me today to consume either in my exercise or on my journey to work. Let us know. Reach out and say, hey, this was perfect. This is exactly what I needed here today. Get us on social media and leave us a message. We want to know about it. So please do that. All resources and show notes or all resources from this episode are over on the show notes page, makemathmoments.com/episode 291. And have a great day, guys.
Until next time, my friends. High fives for us.
And a big high five for you.